Yeah, so the most overlooked piece of the puzzle for women with autoimmune conditions is nervous system regulation and
Okay.
how and why we've become nervous system dysregulated. So most people, when I say most people, I'm going to say most doctors that I saw, and I saw 17, or sorry, 12 different specialists.
Mhm.
Each
Wow.
one of them handed me anxiety medication and they handed me pain medication. And it was just sort of like, on your way now, this is all that we can do for you.
Mhm.
And no one really started to ask why I had an autoimmune condition. And I think like that why is important for us to ask, because until we know the why, that's the true root problem, right? So our nervous system regulation, and you might have heard a lot about this vagal nerve. It's gaining a lot of
Mhm.
notoriety, especially in the trauma world. We've all experienced sort of a global trauma together with this pandemic. And so people are starting to understand what the role of trauma in our life is doing. But specifically, our nervous system has this fight or flight or freeze response. And in women, fawn. Fawn would basically means like, I defer to you and my needs don't matter. And if you ask any woman with Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, even like chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID, every single one of them will tell you she has cold hands or feet. Wow, we could say this is a circulatory problem, right? And while that is true, it's actually because they're stuck in a sympathetic fight or flight mode. And so we say, okay, well, your hands are cold and your hands and feet are cold because your body is not moving correctly. Your blood is not moving. We are stuck in these perpetual states of fight, flight, or freeze. Once we have activated this fight, flight, or freeze, our bodies are super clever, right? Once we're activated, we're meant to only stay in this state for maybe an hour, and then it's meant to pass.
Yes.
But our body knows that wherever there was one emergency, there might be a second one close behind it, right? So in the cases of like bears and tigers and, maybe neighboring clansmen who wanted to steal your food, you needed to be able to survive this, right? So 80% of your body goes back into rest and digest and relax. 20% reserves stay back into pumping cortisol and adrenaline through the body for about the next hour or two, because it says wherever there was one scan or whenever there was one threat, there might be another, and I'm scanning on the horizon for that second threat. The thing is in our modern day life, your phone, your angry boss, jumping in the car, a screaming child, a fight with a spouse. These are all alarm systems, right? So you might have gone from one, your body started to relax a little bit. 30 minutes later, you get a crazy email from your client or your boss or a looming deadline.
Mhm.
And you get stuck in this perpetual cycle of being on and in fight or flight. Because this nervous system starts to just get loaded up, we never get a chance to discharge it. What ends up happening is we deplete our internal resources. Our system becomes inflamed, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about this, but our system becomes inflamed. We're no longer able to absorb nutrients, right? Our brain actually becomes sticky and inflamed. And so what ends up happening is we exhaust ourselves. This can happen for about this burnout stage. This is where we hit burnout. Burnout can usually happen like 2 to 5 years. After 2 to 5 years, our systems go into creating chronic illnesses. And this is where our body stops whispering and starts to scream at us.
Okay. So it's that accumulation of all those signals that are really not, I mean, the purpose is really sort of off, because we don't need to go into that stress response. And yet the body is so wired that it will. And it's accumulating, and all those different elements are coming together. So we get into that perpetual stress response, right?
Absolutely.
So what happens in the body? Why does that connect? How does that connect with autoimmune situations?
Yeah. So once we have, so first, I just want to share that, 70 to 80% of autoimmune conditions, 75 to 80% of autoimmune conditions are in women, right? And majority of those are in marginalized and lower income society, parts of society. And the reason why is because they're constantly fighting through more on a daily basis, right? So they either have more discrimination, or they have to work harder. Maybe they have to work 2 jobs, whatever it is. So we can see that it's not just a woman problem, but it also has to do with where you're at in society and how much sort of stuff you have on you. And what we see is this gut-brain axis, which is along your vagal nerve. Your vagal nerve starts at the base of your neck, and that's where your primal emotional center is. And it only speaks binary. It speaks safe or unsafe.
Right.
And with this safe or unsafe, really what you want to do is create safety for yourself. If every day in your life feels unsafe or uncomfortable or unsettling, your body's going to be vigilant and it's going to be on alert for how it can protect you. Your body has one job, and that job is to protect you and keep you alive. And so this is the struggle with women with autoimmune issues, is we often think that our bodies are working against us. They're fighting us. They are starting to break down, and we get angry. We get angry at our bodies. When in actuality, we should be thanking our bodies because they're actually doing their job, which is to keep us alive. Unfortunately, because we've made it so threadbare in terms of depleting all of our natural resources and making it so we can no longer have communication inside of our brain to our gut, inflammation takes over, and then we start to miscommunicate, right? Like, so we no longer can hear what our stomach is saying to us, right? Or there's many miscommunications along the lines of like, what is safe? If your body perpetually thinks, or if your body is perpetually in an unsafe environment, it will start to seek out unsafe environments